Have you ever seen a supermarket this bizarre? The owner's only goal seems to be driving it into the ground. Need to charge your phone? You'll have to charge the door first just to get in. This massive market doesn't have a single shopping cart, they've all vanished. And get ready to pay through the nose, because everything is ridiculously expensive. Want to return something? Prepare to beg on your knees. Their motto? Employees are the customer's god. But somehow, the more insane this place gets, the more customers it attracts. Located in a bustling Korean business district, Cheonrima Mart belongs to the Dima Group. It's their unofficial dumping ground. Anyone who messes up at Dima gets sent here. Consider it corporate exile. Getting transferred to Cheonrima Mart is basically a not-so-subtle hint to quit. During his pre-election speech, even the mayoral candidate vowed to build a fancy resort complex, driving up property values and burying Cheonrima Mart for good. Meanwhile, at Dima HQ, the top brass is meeting, and the chairman is all about innovation and disruptive thinking. He's got a new project he's really excited about, a bright red box he unveils with dramatic flair. What's inside? Everyone leans in, eager to see the latest groundbreaking invention. Car wax, it turns out. But not just any car wax. This stuff makes your car grow hair. Yep, you heard that right. Hair. This brilliant or bonkers idea reminds everyone of the recent rumors about the chairman's alleged memory loss. People exchange uneasy glances and whisper, but no one dares to challenge the boss. The CFO, ever the sycophant, claps enthusiastically, praising the chairman's unwavering vision, even though he secretly disagreed, the CFO's brown-nosing was legendary. Faced with this awkward situation, everyone else joined in the forced applause, except for one guy. Bok Dong, a director at the company, couldn't take it anymore. He spoke up, calling the product ridiculous. Even though it was the chairman's idea, Bok Dong bluntly stated that launching this hairy car wax could bankrupt the company. Seeing the chairman's face darken, Bok Dong braced himself. He expected fury, a consequence of his bold challenge. But instead, the chairman praised him. Turns out, it was all a test. The chairman, aware of the rumors about his supposed memory loss, wanted to see who would stand up to him and stop this disastrous project. Bok Dong, the lone voice of reason, was about to have his life changed forever. The chairman promoted him to executive vice president, launching him to the peak of his career. Everyone else in the room, now realizing they'd just blindly followed a crazy idea, could only watch in stunned silence. The chairman, clearly impressed with Bok Dong's courage, beamed. Bok Dong, completely caught off guard, grinned like a fool, happiness radiating from him. But just as he was basking in this unexpected triumph, another piece of news arrived, sending him plummeting from the heights of joy straight into the depths of despair. Suddenly, the secretary burst in with an urgent report. Their rival company just launched, Harry Car Wax, and it's flying off the shelves. It's front-page news, with 16 international companies clamoring for distribution deals. The rival's market value has already eclipsed Dima's. Harry Car Wax is a global phenomenon. The room temperature plummets below freezing. Even Bok Dong's triumphant smile freezes on his face. Moments later, the chairman summons him, his expression grim. Bok Dong is told he's no longer needed at headquarters. He's being transferred to Cheonrima Mart, from corporate hero to retail exile in the blink of an eye. Crushed, Bok Dong tearfully accepts his fate. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment, a man sleeps soundly on the floor, his walls plastered with awards. This is Seok Gu, 29, a brilliant Seoul University graduate. Top of his class his entire life, he dedicated himself to studying. But despite his academic achievements, he's been unemployed for 2 years. Today, however, is Seok Gu's lucky day. He's landed a manager position at Cheonrima Mart, a subsidiary of the region's biggest corporation. He feels like he's hit the jackpot. The next morning, brimming with confidence, he arrives at the store. What he finds is unsettling. Employees are asleep on the job or glued to their phones. Shopping carts are mysteriously missing. Rotten vegetables stink up the produce section. Shelves are a chaotic mess. Flies swarm the meat counter. This isn't a supermarket, it's a disaster zone. Seok Gu, attempting to swat a fly, slips on a rotten banana peel and lands flat on his face. Just then, Bok Dong, the newly appointed store manager, approaches, informing him they have a meeting in 10 minutes. Seok Gu stares after him, dumbfounded. He's working under the Bok Dong, the legendary Dima executive. He's convinced he's about to witness a corporate miracle, help rebuild Cheonrima Mart, and become a legend himself. Heart-pounding, Seok Gu enters Bok Dong's office, eager to introduce himself. Bok Dong, however, is in no mood for pleasantries. After reviewing the dismal financials, he declares they need a complete overhaul before they can even think about reopening. So, on day 2, they hold a hiring fair. 2 interesting candidates show up. Both desperate for work and lacking any real qualifications, they launch into a competition of who's had it worse. Curly Hair goes first, declaring himself human garbage. Glasses chimes in, tearfully claiming he's the real trash. They devolve into a sobbing argument over who qualifies as the superior form of refuse. Mid-sob fest, the door explodes inward. A local gangster storms in, demanding compensation. He bought canned goods from the store and broke out in a rash. He's convinced it's their fault and wants his money back. Seok Gu, bewildered, tries to explain that the rash isn't their fault. He offers a refund just to get rid of him. But the gangster, sensing weakness, grabs a chair and prepares for a brawl. Bok Dong, calmly observing the chaos, cracks a knowing smile. He announces he's hiring all three of them. Seok Gu is flabbergasted. What is happening? Is this real life? As if things weren't weird enough, a member of the Bibaya tribe, who also happens to be their chief, arrives with a young girl. He demands jobs for his people, or they'll starve. Bok Dong, ever accommodating, hires the entire tribe. Seok Gu, thoroughly confused, confronts Bok Dong. Hiring unqualified people like this is unfair. Bok Dong, sensing Seok Gu's unease, reminds him that he's not just any employee. He's the manager. He challenges Seok Gu to step up and rewrite the store's reopening plan. Inspired by Bok Dong's words, Seok Gu feels a surge of purpose. He is the manager. He can do this. Meanwhile, the Bibaya chief returns to his people, sharing the good news in their native tongue. After decades of wandering in Korea, they finally have a place to belong. They erupt in a joyous tribal dance, a strangely heartwarming sight. The next morning, Seok Gu, energized and ready to take charge, heads to work. Just then, a luxury car pulls up beside him. The CFO flags Seok Gu down and invites him for a ride. The car takes them to a secluded spot. The CFO reveals he knows Seok Gu craves a position at corporate HQ. He offers a deal, complete a simple task, and Seok Gu will become a team leader under him. The task? Spy on Bok Dong. Document his every move, right down to his bathroom breaks. Everything must be reported back to the CFO. Seok Gu is taken aback. This is weird. But a promotion is a promotion, right? He agrees. The CFO's motive? He and Bok Dong are the chairman's top contenders. With Bok Dong exiled to the supermarket, the CFO sees his path to vice president clear. He knows the ambitious Bok Dong won't stay put, so he needs someone to keep tabs on him. Seok Gu, the eager manager, seems like the perfect pawn. But the CFO has underestimated sweet, innocent Seok Gu. Just as the CFO thinks he's won, Seok Gu asks a killer question. Should he tell Bok Dong about this arrangement? The CFO stares at his supposed asset, a look of dawning horror on his face. Did he choose the wrong guy? Back at the supermarket, Seok Gu finds yet another scene that makes him question reality. The Bibaya tribe members are lined up at the entrance, each holding a strange contraption. A female customer explains. Insert a coin, and they become human shopping carts, following shoppers around the store. Seok Gu, the smart, capable manager, feels a pang of inadequacy. His brain simply can't compete with this level of innovation. Then, to his astonishment, the Bibaya tribe breaks into a spontaneous, mesmerizing dance right there in the supermarket aisles. The infectious music and rhythmic movements are irresistible. Seok Gu finds himself swaying along. He's not sure what's real anymore. Just when he thinks the gangster hasn't shown up for work, Glasses informs him that the gangster is working in customer service, in logistics. A furious customer storms in with a defective product. Seok Gu follows, expecting to witness a customer service meltdown. Instead, he opens the door to a bizarre tableau. The customer, who moments before was yelling, is now kneeling on the floor, completely cowed by the gangster's intimidating presence. The customer service center has been transformed into a regal throne room, with the gangster presiding from a central, elevated position, dressed in elaborate robes. It looks more like a court of law than customer service. The gangster, who yesterday was all threats and bluster, now commands respect with a few quiet words, sending the disgruntled customer scurrying away, thoroughly intimidated. Seok Gu is utterly baffled. What is even happening? Glasses explains that it's all the manager's doing. Bok Dong believes in a unique approach to customer service. Their philosophy isn't. The customer is always right. But rather, the employee is always right. Hence the royal attire. On opening day, Seok Gu is caught in a whirlwind of bizarre activity. He diligently compiles his report and sends it off to the CFO. The CFO, eager for dirt on Bok Dong, rips open the report, only to find it completely incomprehensible. References to King Bok Dong and a supermarket kingdom leave him utterly confused. Intrigued, he decides to investigate in person. Upon arriving at the store, he's immediately confronted by the human shopping cart brigade. He pushes his way through, taking in the surreal scene, and realizes he's been played. He grabs Seok Gu by the collar, ready to unleash his fury. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name. The CFO turns to see a giant sunflower. Looking closer, he recognizes Bok Dong. His mind reels. What is going on? He demands an explanation. Bok Dong, with no attempt at subtlety, reveals his plan to destroy the Dema Group. His first step? A union election. Only the best employee will be chosen as a representative. Bok Dong then proceeds to spend the company's funds on an 18-karat gold staff, topped with a giant red jewel. He stays up all night sewing a giant banner on pure wool. And as if that wasn't enough, he commissions a solid gold championship belt for the union representative. He's effectively draining the company's coffers while inciting fierce competition among the employees, all part of his plan to bring down the supermarket. Unsurprisingly, the employees go wild. The gangster and the Bibaya chief, both eager for power, decide to settle things the old-fashioned way, with their fists. Thus begins the Cheonrima Mart Union president competition. First up is the gangster, a former neighborhood tough with surprising strength. He's the undisputed pretty boy of the supermarket arena. Next up, a group of men in black solemnly carry a coffin onto the makeshift arena. The Bibaya chief, aka the Bibaya giant, emerges, clad in ceremonial garb, looking like he's ready to send the gangster to an early grave. Seok Gu, watching from the sidelines, is speechless. How did a normal supermarket turn into a fighting ring? Meanwhile, Bok Dong wears a sinister grin. His plan is working. After some pre-fight trash talk, the match begins. The gangster strikes first with his signature carrot pole attack. He thinks he's won, but the chief barely flinches. The Bibaya chief retaliates with a swift, open-handed strike, sending the gangster sprawling. The two grapple, their moves as unpredictable as they are entertaining. Finally, the gangster unleashes his ultimate move. White Phoenix takes flight. Just as he's about to strike, another Bibaya tribesman, hidden in the shadows, trips him. The chief seizes the opportunity, delivering a devastating nutcracker punch, knocking the gangster out cold. The crowd gasps. Bok Dong declares the Bibaya chief the winner and the new union president. The gangster, however, is not pleased. He demands a rematch, vowing revenge. To everyone's surprise, the chief apologizes. He admits the victory wasn't entirely fair, but he needed to win to support his family. He offers the gangster a small gift as compensation, a tiny Bibaya horn. The gangster stares at the horn, then at his injuries, wondering if the chief's apology was entirely sincere. As union president, the Bibaya chief throws himself into his work. He expertly fillets a fish with lightning-fast knife skills, transforming it into a beautiful plate of sushi. Housewives go wild, scrambling to buy his creations. Meanwhile, the other Bibaya tribesmen are busy selling mountain ginseng, claiming it gives men the chief's strength and vitality. Customers can't get enough. The supermarket, under the Bibaya tribe's influence, is thriving. Sales are booming. Seok Gu attributes it all to Bok Dong's brilliant marketing strategy. He's in awe of Bok Dong's business acumen. Bok Dong, however, is frustrated. He's not ruining the supermarket, he's making it more successful. Seeing the supermarket bustling with customers, Bok Dong decides to change tactics. If customers can't get in, the supermarket will surely fail. He devises two new entrance strategies and presents them to Seok Gu. Option 1. The revolving door of doom. As soon as a customer enters, the door locks. They have to spin a certain number of times to generate enough power to unlock it. Seok Gu has an immediate headache. Customers are here to shop, not exercise. Who's going to put up with this? Option 2 is even more terrifying. The vertical sensor door. It slams shut when it senses a customer approaching. Walk too slowly, and you risk losing your head. Seok Gu is baffled. Why mess with a winning formula? The supermarket is finally doing well. But Bok Dong won't be swayed. He flips a coin to decide. Meanwhile, at HQ, the CFO is shocked by the supermarket's sudden resurgence. He decides to send in a top-tier spy. He chooses Mi Ran, the star of the assistant department, fluent in 8 languages. Mi Ran, dreaming of a glamorous assignment in Paris, London, or Tokyo, is crushed when she's told she's going to the local supermarket. Dejected, she arrives at Cheonrima Mart just as the new revolving door is installed. She becomes the unwitting test subject. The door locks behind her, refusing to budge. After a moment of panic, she realizes it's a power-generating contraption. She pushes with all her might, spinning until the door finally unlocks. She stumbles out, exhausted, only to be caught by Seok Gu. Later, Mi Ran reports to Bok Dong, who has heard of her stellar reputation at HQ. He praises her performance, catching her off guard. Just as she's basking in the unexpected compliment, he asks point-blank if she's the CFO's spy. Caught red-handed, Mi Ran confesses, blurting out her entire mission. Bok Dong, surprisingly, isn't angry. He simply advises her to focus on her work. Leaving his office, Mai Ran has a newfound respect for Bok Dong. Maybe he's not so bad after all. Unfazed by the supermarket's newfound success, Bok Dong decides to tackle another area: unused corners. He converts them into free arcades. It's a childhood dream come true. He was too poor to play arcade games as a kid. Seok Gu is perplexed. This seems like a waste of resources, but Bok Dong is unstoppable. While overseeing the arcade setup, Seok Gu is drawn to a dance machine. He can't resist. He launches into an impromptu, highly skilled dance performance, showcasing his impressive moves to the bewildered staff. He even takes off his shirt and shoes, completely losing himself in the rhythm. Meanwhile, Mai Ran discovers an abandoned office. Despite her high heels and skirt, she diligently cleans the entire space, transforming it into a spotless haven. The staff, witnessing Mai Ran's dedication, realize she's not there to spy on them. They embrace each other, thrilled to finally have a proper office. The next day, a young girl appears in the supermarket. The gangster, initially aggressive, approaches her, only to burst into tears. Seok Gu arrives to find the gangster sobbing uncontrollably in front of the child. He's completely confused. Bok Dong enters to find the entire staff in tears, with the little girl standing calmly amidst the chaos. He asks Seok Gu what's going on, but Seok Gu can only sob in response. The girl asks Bok Dong if he's the owner. He confirms, and she asks if her dad can have a job. She shows him a photo of her deceased father. Bok Dong is taken aback. He takes the girl to his office and hears her heartbreaking story. Her father dedicated his life to passing the bar exam, but never succeeded. He was eventually disqualified and forced to apply for regular jobs, facing constant rejection. Her mother, unable to cope with their poverty, left them. Her father continued his desperate job search until he was tragically killed in a car accident just a week ago. At the funeral, the girl overheard neighbors gossiping about her father's unemployment, labeling him a failure. She didn't want him to be remembered that way. She wanted him to have a job, even in death, so she brought his resume to Bok Dong. Bok Dong, always looking for ways to spend the company's money, agreed to hire the deceased father. Learning the girl was now an orphan, he hired her too. The staff, witnessing this act of kindness, were deeply moved. Only Seok Gu remained confused. Inspired by the girl's situation, Bok Dong launched another project, a library, with the girl as the librarian. He allowed her to study while working, even assigning Seok Gu to tutor her for an hour each day. He insisted on paying her a full adult salary, plus her father's salary, effectively using company funds for charity. Seok Gu was stunned. First, child labor, now employing the deceased? Bok Dong's business practices were questionable, but his compassion was undeniable. Despite his reservations, Seok Gu found himself tutoring the girl, patiently helping her with her homework. Mothers shopping in the supermarket were touched by this heartwarming scene. The girl, seizing the opportunity, began recommending related books, boosting sales. Seok Gu realized that even this seemingly absurd act was generating revenue. Bok Dong, despite his unorthodox methods, was a business genius. To try and regain some semblance of normalcy, Seok Gu decided on a new initiative: everyone gets a Western name. It would add a touch of class, making the supermarket feel more international. The next day, he proudly introduced himself as Peter. He then went around checking on everyone else's names, only to discover they'd completely missed the point. Glasses and curly hair chose ridiculously local nicknames. Even Mai Ran, the sophisticated HQ employee, picked a traditional Korean name. Seok Gu despaired. The Babaya tribe, though not Korean, chose names of Korean pop stars, effectively becoming a K-pop cover group. He even encountered a mini IU. Seok Gu was reaching his limit, but these were relatively normal compared to what he saw next. A flash of gold caught his eye. It was a man in Middle Eastern attire. Intrigued, Seok Gu approached. The man turned, and Seok Gu gasped. It was Bok Dong. Apparently, Bok Dong thought the Western names idea was good, but regular English names were too boring. If they were going international, they were going all the way. Dressed as a Middle Eastern monarch, Bok Dong began his daily inspection. He encountered a wealthy Middle Eastern investor, shopping for milk. The two locked eyes, a spark igniting between them. The music swelled, and they broke into a spontaneous, synchronized dance, captivating everyone around them. Their intense gazes and surprisingly coordinated moves created an unforgettable spectacle. A bromance was born. The investor felt divinely guided to meet Bok Dong in this unlikely setting. He'd been in town discussing a potential investment in the region's largest supermarket. This encounter felt like fate. After their impromptu dance-off, the investor, swept away by the moment, invested a whopping $10 billion in Bok Dong's supermarket. Bok Dong was dumbfounded. He was trying to ruin the supermarket, not turn it into a gold mine. The news of the massive investment made headlines. The Dama vice president and CFO, seething with jealousy, paid a visit to the supermarket, intending to confront Bok Dong. Bok Dong, however, remained utterly unconcerned. His goal was to destroy Dama, and he wasn't afraid of anyone. He greeted them with his feet up on his desk, a picture of nonchalant defiance. He then pulled out a pen and aimed it menacingly at them. Terrified, they fled. In the parking garage, the vice president discovered his car had been redecorated by the Babaya tribe. He collapsed in defeat. With the executives gone, a new crisis emerged. A horde of children descended upon the supermarket. Bok Dong's free arcade had turned the store into a kid's paradise, a chaotic playground. A group of students were smoking in the bathroom. Kids were running wild, disrupting everything. Someone stole the Babaya chief's gold belt. Others were swarming the gangster. Bok Dong, finally reaching his breaking point, stormed off to his office, retrieving a secret weapon from his closet. Seok Gu, fearing Bok Dong was about to unleash his wrath on the children, tried to intervene. But Bok Dong emerged, with a magical flute passed down from his ancestors. Accompanied by the flute's enchanting melody, the children, as if hypnotized, followed Bok Dong out of the store and into the neighboring supermarket. He then sprinted back to Cheonrima Mart, leaving the bewildered children behind. The staff stared in awe. Bok Dong, with a flourish, ripped down the arcade sign. With the flashing lights gone, peace returned to the supermarket. The next day, Bok Dong was driving to work when a man suddenly jumped in front of his car. Bok Dong slammed on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a collision. He angrily confronted the man, assuming he was causing trouble. The man explained he was a jelly supplier. His business was failing after Mart stopped carrying his product. His factory was on the brink of bankruptcy, and he was desperate. Bok Dong, after sampling the jelly and finding it delicious, had an epiphany. He had $10 billion burning a hole in his pocket, and a supermarket to bankrupt. He offered the man a deal. Cheonrima Mart would buy his jelly, but at triple the price. The man was stunned. He'd met generous CEOs, but this was unprecedented. He followed Bok Dong back to the supermarket, setting up a jelly stall. Seok Gu watched, bewildered. When he learned about the tripled price, he was speechless. This was financial suicide. They'd lose money on every sale. But Bok Dong was determined to make it work. The supplier, emboldened by Bok Dong's unwavering faith, was reinvigorated. He proudly displayed his family's generations old jelly-making certificate. It turned out he was a descendant of a royal chef. Customers, intrigued by the high price and the impressive credentials, flocked to the stall. Elders, after tasting the jelly, were hooked. It was the taste of home, a traditional recipe passed down through generations. The high price didn't deter them. They bought it by the bucket load. The jelly became an overnight sensation. The factory went into overdrive, working 24/7 to meet the demand. The jelly craze even caught the attention of international buyers. Impressed with the jelly's quality, the international buyers placed large orders. The supplier, grateful for Bok Dong's generosity, refused to sell his jelly anywhere else, remaining loyal to Cheonrima Mart. Bok Dong's selfless act of saving a failing business became a media sensation. He was interviewed by newspapers and TV stations, receiving numerous awards. But Bok Dong's smile was gone. He was failing at failing. Seeing the supermarket's profits soar, he ordered his staff to give away the store's finest bottled water to anyone buying jelly, hoping to drain the supermarket's funds. Meanwhile, the CFO, watching the news, no longer believed Bok Dong was trying to sabotage the supermarket. He suspected Bok Dong was aiming for expansion. He couldn't let that happen. At the same time, the vice president was summoned by the chairman and berated for his laziness. The chairman, in a fit of rage, nearly assaulted him. The vice president fled, shoeless, to the parking garage to mournfully pet his defaced car. The CFO contacted Seok Gu, and they left the supermarket together. Myran, now fiercely loyal to Bok Dong, secretly followed them, suspecting a conspiracy. The CFO offered Seok Gu a transfer to HQ. The condition? Betray Bok Dong. A major event was coming that could make or break the supermarket. The CFO wanted Seok Gu to blame everything on Bok Dong. Mai Ran, eavesdropping, assumed the worst. She prepared to warn Bok Dong. But just as she was about to leave, she heard Seok Gu misunderstand the CFO's offer. He thought the CFO wanted him to actively sabotage Bok Dong. Seok Gu refused. He longed for a position at HQ, but he'd grown to respect Bok Dong. He didn't always understand Bok Dong's methods, but the staff was happy, and the supermarket felt like a family. Mai Ran, relieved, slipped away. However, after she left, Seok Gu regretted his hasty refusal. He didn't want to betray Bok Dong or the CFO. He was trapped. So, Seok Gu decided to work for both sides. The CFO was speechless. This brilliant graduate seemed to have completely missed the point. Meanwhile, Kim, the mayoral candidate, was worried about negative publicity surrounding his development project. He saw Bok Dong in the supermarket as a way to deflect attention. He planned a surprise hygiene inspection, hoping to find violations and shift the focus onto the supermarket's supposed shortcomings. When Seok Gu learned about the impending inspection, he knew things were serious. Bok Dong was out, so Seok Gu had to handle it himself. He greeted Kim by performing a handstand, a gesture of respect in Korea. Everyone applauded Seok Gu's politeness. Even Kim seemed impressed. Seok Gu then launched into a series of over-the-top compliments, so exaggerated that onlookers began to criticize Kim. They assumed Seok Gu's blatant flattery was a sign that Kim was incompetent. Embarrassed, Kim asked for water. Seok Gu, eager to please, brought him a glass, with a piece of cabbage floating in it. He explained that by sucking on the cabbage while drinking, Kim wouldn't choke. Everyone except Seok Gu interpreted this as a satirical jab at Kim. The cabbage, resembling a large bill, was seen as a symbol of corruption. They applauded Seok Gu's bravery. The next day, news of Kim's inspection and Seok Gu's cabbage stunt went viral. The supermarket's popularity continued to rise. Bok Dong, increasingly desperate, racked his brain for new ways to sabotage the store. Seok Gu suggested a buy-one-get-one free promotion to capitalize on the increased foot traffic. Bok Dong, terrified of further success, dismissed the idea as too conventional. However, Seok Gu's suggestion sparked a new, even more destructive idea in Bok Dong's mind. The supermarket was located in a prime, high-traffic area. 4 major supermarkets were competing in the area. To survive, they needed to stand out. Bok Dong's plan? Promote the other supermarkets, driving customers away from Cheonrima Mart. He printed 100,000 flyers advertising his competitors, hiring over 100 temporary workers to distribute them. He was solving unemployment and sabotaging his own business. A genius, he thought. Seok Gu was horrified. The flyers even stated that shopping at Cheonrima Mart was expensive. In a city of 460,000, Bok Dong was distributing over 100,000 flyers promoting the competition. Seok Gu couldn't fathom his logic. Every attempt to ruin the supermarket seemed to have the opposite effect. While having lunch, Bok Dong and Seok Gu were approached by the owners of the other supermarkets. Impressed by Bok Dong's marketing genius, they asked for advice on their flyers. Bok Dong, ever helpful, grabbed a pen and scribbled on their flyers. On one, he wrote, "The reason we're selling at half the profit is because of our good mood." On another, he added, "I will treat you well with your money." The other supermarket owners were stunned. One, nearly apoplectic, accused Bok Dong of mockery. Bok Dong protested, claiming this was his supermarket's motto, direct and honest. The owner scoffed, declaring that if Bok Dong's flyers actually said that, he would dance in fishnet stockings in front of his store. Seok Gu gasped, while Bok Dong simply stared. Later, a sympathetic Seok Gu showed the man Cheonrima Mart's flyer. The man's eyes bulged. As they left, Seok Gu expressed concern for the man's dignity, but the owner was a man of his word. He donned red underwear and fishnet stockings, performing a mortifying dance in front of his store. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt his business. With Bok Dong constantly stirring up chaos, Seok Gu was stressed. Every day, he feared what new absurdity Bok Dong would unleash. One day, Seok Gu found Bok Dong working the cash register. Moments later, Bok Dong seemed struck by inspiration, abandoning his post and rushing back to his office. Seok Gu felt a sense of foreboding. The next day, a heated ondol, a traditional Korean underfloor heating system, appeared in the supermarket, with Bok Dong lounging on top, fanning himself with a bamboo fan. Seok Gu, almost used to this by now, approached cautiously, stifling a laugh. He asked Bok Dong what in the world was going on. Bok Dong, looking at the exasperated Seok Gu, calmly explained that it was his new checkout counter design. He'd realized how tiring it was to stand all day, so he created a heated relaxation station for his cashiers. After all, in this supermarket, the employees, not the customers, were kings. He wanted them to feel the warmth of family during their shifts. His words touched the hearts of the employees, who looked at him with newfound adoration. Seok-gu, however, remained unconvinced. Bok-dong, ignoring him, poured himself a cup of tea and continued to relax. The supermarket's unusual work culture attracted attention. 4 strangers arrived, the Phoenix Corporation's F4. There was Rising Dragon of Electronics, a flamboyant playboy, somersault of chemicals, a brooding, mysterious type, god of tools, a smooth operator with his lighting crew, and White Steel, a handsome innocent. Their arrival caused a stir. The staff, assuming they were troublemakers, confronted them, escorting them to Bok-dong's office. The F4 explained they were impressed by Bok-dong's treatment of his employees. Word had spread about his family-like atmosphere, his disregard for qualifications and background, and his efforts to make his employees comfortable. They'd come to announce that their workers would now exclusively shop at Cheonrima Mart. Bok-dong, overjoyed, thanked the F4 profusely, and then encouraged them to shop at his competitors' stores instead. The F4 were adamant, thanks to their patronage and Bok-dong's unconventional marketing. The supermarket sales shattered all previous records. Bok-dong was beside himself. Was he cursed? Every attempt to sabotage the store only made it more successful. Meanwhile, Seok-gu, beaming, reviewed the sales figures. He decided to capitalize on the supermarket's popularity with daily staff dance performances for the customers. Despite the short rehearsal time, the performances were a hit. But Bok-dong couldn't let them have too much fun. Just as everyone was celebrating, he appeared in white tights, grabbed a pole, and launched into a shockingly suggestive pole dance. He got a little too into it, his energetic, almost aggressive style surprisingly appealing to the customers. Instead of being repulsed, they were entertained, even throwing money at him. Bok-dong's fiery performance was another unexpected success. Afterward, a perplexed Seok-gu confronted Bok-dong. He needed to understand Bok-dong's motivations. He knew executives were often unhappy about being transferred to the supermarket, but Bok-dong's actions were baffling. Sales were skyrocketing, and he was pole dancing for tips. Seok-gu had initially wanted to drive customers away. Bok-dong, instead of answering, advised Seok-gu to trust his instincts and not be swayed by others. The supermarket's growing fame attracted a reporter. She interviewed locals, who praised Cheonrima Mart. Arriving at the store, she found a line of people waiting outside. Bok-dong's power-generating revolving door had become a popular exercise spot. Inside, she was greeted by the Bibaya human shopping carts, who not only carried groceries but also offered free shopping advice. The employees are kings motto was evident in the royal costumes and the requirement to kneel when requesting a refund. The reporter, wanting a dramatic story, decided to fabricate a narrative about Bok-dong, a high-flying executive, brought low by a tragic accident, now exiled to a forgotten supermarket. Bok-dong's faith in humanity dwindled. He'd even resorted to eating tree bark at the subway station. He was at his wit's end. He had to destroy the supermarket. The reporter, oblivious to his inner turmoil, continued her enthusiastic commentary. Bok-dong ordered her out. Seok-gu, however, saw a publicity opportunity. He insisted on doing the interview, claiming he could handle Korea's toughest questions, even drinking fish sauce for 3 days straight. Seeing Seok-gu's eagerness, Bok-dong decided to drop a bombshell on live TV. He announced a groundbreaking plan that would shock Dama's board and executives, sending shareholders into a panic. He was done being subtle. The next day, Bok-dong's interview made headlines, but the reporters misinterpreted his message. They saw him as a business savant, hinting at a massive stock surge. Dama's stock price skyrocketed. Bok-dong was devastated. This wasn't what he wanted at all. Meanwhile, the chairman and other executives saw the news. The chairman, who'd been closely monitoring Bok-dong's antics, decided it was time for him to return. He'd always valued Bok-dong's abilities and offered him his old job back. Bok-dong refused. He saw through the chairman's ploy. The chairman was using him, trying to avoid responsibility for the mess created by the vice president and CFO. Bok-dong's resentment ran deep. He wasn't just angry about being exiled. He'd spent years cleaning up the chairman's messes, taking the fall for failed projects. He'd even covered for the chairman when he'd unjustly fired over 1,000 employees, including Bok-dong's best friend, Mr. Kim. One mistake and Bok-dong was banished to Cheonrima Mart. The chairman, hearing Bok-dong's grievances, decided to give the vice president one last chance. He asked him what he truly wanted to do. The vice president confessed his dream of opening a tteokbokki, spicy rice cakes, restaurant. From childhood, the vice president had harbored a secret passion for tteokbokki, suppressed only by his grandfather's disapproval. The chairman, though skeptical, was swayed by his grandson's enthusiasm and agreed to fund the venture. The vice president, ecstatic, shared his plans with the CFO, who, upon hearing about the tteokbokki restaurant, had a devious idea: use Cheonrima Mart as a test kitchen. The food industry was risky, and if anything went wrong, The supermarket would take the fall. The vice president was thrilled. The CFO was a genius. With the business plan in place, all that remained was product development, which the vice president decided to handle himself. Back at the supermarket, Seok Gu proposed a Halloween event. Bok Dong, seeing another opportunity for disaster, readily agreed, putting Seok Gu in charge. Bok Dong then secretly messaged the staff, instructing them to wear Halloween costumes, with a Korean twist. Only Seok Gu didn't get the memo. The next day, a dapper Seok Gu, dressed as a vampire, arrived at the supermarket, ready for Halloween. He was met by two employees dressed as traditional Korean ghosts, scaring him half to death. He criticized their costumes, which looked more like horror movies than Halloween. Things only got weirder. Downstairs, he encountered a faceless egg greeting customers. Then came employees dressed as angels and demons. But the grand finale was Bok Dong, dressed not as the Grim Reaper, as one might expect, but as a mythical Korean bird god, complete with elaborate makeup and headdress. Seok Gu was speechless, but the Halloween atmosphere was undeniably festive. Customers and children were having a blast. Seok Gu, once again, had to admit Bok Dong's bizarre ideas somehow worked. Meanwhile, the vice president had perfected his tteokbokki recipe. He eagerly offered the CFO the first taste. The CFO, unsuspecting, took a bite. But the moment it touched his tongue, the CFO convulsed. The sheer spiciness of the tteokbokki sent shivers down his spine. Maintaining a brave face, he choked it down, giving the vice president a thumbs up. With the tteokbokki ready, the CFO approached Bok Dong, proposing they sell it at Cheonrima Mart. Bok Dong, delighted at this opportunity for disaster, readily agreed. However, his uncharacteristic enthusiasm made the CFO uneasy. He suspected a trap. Seeing Bok Dong's sinister grin, he felt a growing sense of dread. Bok Dong offered the tteokbokki to his staff for a taste test. The gangster took a bite and immediately regretted it. He let out a wail of pure agony, unable to speak. Intrigued, Glasses and Curly Hair also tried it. They too succumbed to the overwhelming spiciness, collapsing on the floor. Everyone watched in bewildered horror. This tteokbokki was a weapon of mass destruction. A curious Mai Ran reached for a piece, but Seok Gu stopped her, warning her that it wasn't fit for human consumption. He vehemently opposed selling it, fearing disastrous consequences. Bok Dong argued that everyone had different tastes. He pointed to the Bibaya tribe, who were enjoying the tteokbokki. Seok Gu looked over at the tribesmen, who were sweating profusely and unable to speak, and decided not to argue. The tteokbokki went on sale, with the chairman himself attending the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Despite the CFO's warnings, the chairman decided to try a piece. He didn't last 2 seconds before passing out from the intense heat. The vice president, seeing his grandfather collapse, assumed it was from sheer delight at the deliciousness of his creation. They rushed the chairman to the hospital. On the way, the chairman regained consciousness, ripped off his oxygen mask, and ordered them to stop the car. A group of local tteokbokki vendors had gathered outside Cheonrima Mart to protest Dema Group selling tteokbokki. Dema's stock price plummeted. Furious, the chairman summoned the vice president, the CFO, and Bok Dong. He blamed them for not researching the market and demanded one of them take responsibility and resign. Just then, the secretary rushed in and turned on the TV. A parliamentary hearing was underway, and the government was proposing a 700 billion won bailout. For Cheonrima Mart, the chairman and his team were stunned. Only Bok Dong remained calm. It was Seok Gu's doing. Anticipating controversy and potential accusations of monopolizing the tteokbokki market, he devised a backup plan. Partner with local tteokbokki vendors. Cheonrima Mart would fund and renovate their stalls and supply ingredients, and in return, the vendors would sell their unique tteokbokki creations under the Cheonrima Mart brand. It was a win-win. The small businesses gained financial security and a powerful partner, while the supermarket avoided accusations of anti-competitive practices. The government, impressed by this collaboration, offered the bailout. The chairman and vice president were ecstatic. The CFO was furious. Bok Dong had supported Seok Gu's plan, wanting to showcase his talent and recommend him to the chairman. News of the small business bailout made headlines, putting Cheonrima Mart back in the spotlight. The in-store tteokbokki stalls became a social media sensation, with long lines of people eager to try the fiery dish. Sales soared again. Throughout this, Mai Ran and Seok Gu had been working closely together, coordinating with the vendors. They'd grown closer, and Mai Ran was impressed by Seok Gu's ingenuity. She invited him for a drink after work. Seok Gu, however, had a low tolerance for alcohol and was quickly intoxicated. Mai Ran had to take him home. Thanks to her daily revolving door workouts, she was able to carry him without much difficulty. As she was leaving, she saw a troubled look on Seok Gu's face and stayed to comfort him. They talked, and eventually, they both fell asleep. With the supermarket's continued success, Bok Dong was back to scheming. One day, he saw a bakery offering a 60% discount to students taking the college entrance exam. This gave him an idea. He proposed a student discount at Cheonrima Mart. Seok-gu, sensitive about his exam failures, hadn't suggested this himself. The exam was over. Wasn't it too late for a student promotion? Bokdong believed it was never too late to help struggling students. He decided to hire 100 part-time student workers, paying them 30% above market rate. It would be valuable work experience, he reasoned. Seok-gu thought he'd lost his mind. The supermarket couldn't afford this. They didn't need 100 extra employees. With the increased wages, they'd lose millions every day, even with increased sales. Hearing the projected losses, Bokdong beamed. This was exactly what he wanted. The next day, Seok-gu walked out of his office and into a scene of utter chaos. A small army of students stood in formation, with the gangster, now acting as a drill sergeant, barking orders and teaching them supermarket etiquette. It was opening time. Customers were greeted with personalized shopping assistants, practically being waited on hand and foot. It was less like shopping and more like a royal procession. A distraught Seok-gu confronted Bokdong. Wasn't the employee supposed to be king? Bokdong, realizing his mistake, quickly reassigned the students to a mountainside cabbage patch. Seok-gu stared at the field of green, dotted with students in red uniforms, and nearly had a heart attack. Passers-by, impressed by the vibrant cabbage field, inquired about buying some. Seok-gu, seeing a sales opportunity, started to take orders. Bokdong, however, was not about to let his money-losing cabbage scheme be profitable. He yelled that the cabbage wasn't for sale. Seok-gu snapped. He grabbed the loudspeaker and, risking his job, overrode Bokdong, instructing the student workers to sell the cabbage. Bokdong's elaborate plan to waste money on cabbages had failed. He locked himself in his office, defeated. Why was it so hard to bankrupt a supermarket? Suddenly, the security system blared. 2 customers flagged as highly disruptive, level 10 and level 12 threat levels, were heading for the manager's office. The staff braced themselves. Just as everyone panicked, Bokdong burst through the door. Bokdong, wielding a staff, sent the disruptive customers packing with a few well-chosen words. But his anger wasn't directed at the customers. It was at Seok-gu for interfering with his cabbage scheme. Seok-gu received a stern lecture, and Bokdong regained control of the supermarket. His resolve to bankrupt the store remained unshaken. He decided to reward a top-performing employee. Seok-gu, finally hearing a sensible idea, was on board. It would motivate the staff and boost morale. He suggested gift certificates, but Bokdong, naturally, bought a car with the supermarket's funds. The staff, eyes gleaming, worked with renewed vigor, eager to win the prize. When the time came to choose the winner, they gathered around the security monitors to see who had worked the hardest. To their shock, a ghostly figure appeared on the screens, flitting through the aisles, performing various tasks. The little girl recognized her deceased father. Even in death, he was helping his daughter, working diligently in the supermarket. It seemed paying him a salary wasn't entirely pointless. They decided to give the car to the little girl. She, in turn, offered to share it with the entire staff, as they were all family. Everyone was deeply touched by her generosity. Meanwhile, the CFO, growing increasingly anxious about the supermarket's success, summoned Mai Ran to report on Bokdong. Mai Ran, now firmly on Bokdong's side, had nothing but praise for him. The CFO realized he'd lost his inside woman. He turned to his trusted ally, Department Head Park, ordering him to infiltrate the supermarket and find dirt on Bokdong and his team. The next day, Department Head Park arrived at Cheonrima Mart. He immediately took issue with the Baya tribe, who were exercising during their break. He berated them, but they'd already completed their work for the day, leaving him with no grounds for complaint. Humiliated, Department Head Park felt his mission was off to a rocky start. He stormed into the office and demanded employee records. Seok-gu, however, couldn't produce them. Bokdong's unconventional hiring practices and Seiku's subsequent forgetfulness meant the records were non-existent. All he had were blank sheets of paper. Department Head Park immediately sensed an opportunity. Bokdong's haphazard hiring was a clear violation of company policy. He questioned the employees, discovering a motley crew of ex-cons, long-term unemployed, and people with no supermarket experience. He felt this was a grave injustice. He decided to administer a recruitment test, demanding a score of 900 or higher, or they'd be fired. Seok-gu, overhearing this, rushed to inform Bokdong. While technically following company rules, Department Head Park's actions threatened the supermarket and its unique workforce. He urged Bokdong to intervene. He didn't want anyone fired, nor did he want the supermarket to suffer. Curly hair and glasses, summoned for questioning, frantically started studying English. They were distraught but determined to try. Miran, seeing their distress, asked what was wrong. Learning about the test, she offered to help. They knew their chances were slim, especially after learning about Miran's perfect TOEFL score. They embraced each other, weeping. Meanwhile, the department head Park continued his investigation. He discovered the library was managed by a third grader and demanded Seok-gu fire her immediately, threatening to report the supermarket for child labor. Just then, Bok Dong appeared. He defended the girl and declared himself responsible for all hiring decisions. Department head Park secretly reported to the CFO. Unbeknownst to him, Bok Dong had been eavesdropping. Realizing Department head Park was the CFO's spy, he dragged him into a dark room. If diplomacy failed, Bok Dong resorted to intimidation. He cornered Department head Park, unleashing a torrent of verbal abuse, sending the terrified man scrambling out of the office. Department head Park, eager to escape, sped out of the parking lot, nearly hitting the gangster, who was staging an elaborate accident. He leaped onto the car, fake blood, tomato juice, gushing from his nose. Department head Park rushed out to check on him, only to find the gangster seemingly lifeless. As he reached for his phone to call the police, the Bibaya tribe surrounded him, accusing him of being the perpetrator. Department head Park, horrified, fled the scene. He'd come to investigate and was now implicated in a possible hit and run. As soon as he left, the gangster sprang to his feet, the other supermarket employees emerging from their hiding spots. It had all been a ruse. They celebrated their successful expulsion of the spy. Seok-gu, observing this, gained a newfound respect for his eccentric colleagues. Department head Park, shaken, submitted his resignation to the CFO, vowing never to return to Cheonrima Mart. The CFO is furious. How could his team be so incompetent? Meanwhile, a rival supermarket sent an employee to observe Cheonrima Mart's operations. The man, radiating an aura of intense sadness, stood motionless in the grocery aisle, his gloomy presence repelling customers and staff. Miran and the gangster tried to reason with him, but he quickly reduced them to tears. Bok Dong decided to intervene. After a brief, intense staring contest, he whispered something in the man's ear. The man then went to the CFO's office and started selling groceries. His unsettling demeanor unnerved the CFO. He ordered the department head Park to remove him, but even Park was too intimidated to approach. The man then turned his attention to the CFO's prized tangerine tree. Under his intense gaze, the tree withered and died, seemingly mirroring the man's despair. The CFO wept over his lost tree. That evening, Miran and Seok-gu had dinner together. Miran was still upset by her encounter with the sad man. Seok-gu comforted her, deepening her feelings for him. While eating, they spotted the CFO through the window, walking with a beautiful young woman. They were holding hands, looking intimate. Seok-gu, excited, snapped a picture. The next day, the woman appeared at the supermarket. Seok-gu, however, hadn't seen her face clearly the night before and didn't recognize her. They learned she was a new intern from headquarters and, coincidentally, a former classmate of Seok-gu's. She greeted Seok-gu warmly, calling him Appa, older brother, and also seemed to know Bok Dong. It turned out the intern, Jina, was the CFO's daughter, and her internship at Cheonrima Mart was a secret from her father. The CFO, upon learning this, was apoplectic. Jina, dressed in her supermarket uniform, charmed the staff with her sweet and innocent demeanor. She quickly became one of the team. That afternoon, Seok-gu called a meeting to discuss the chairman's autobiography, asking everyone to write a review. No one was enthusiastic. Bok Dong, however, had a game to play, a raffle to determine who would handle the company's end-of-year party planning. Everyone eagerly drew lots. The cashier drew A. Thanks for participating. So did everyone else, until the gangster, who proudly displayed his winning ticket. The grand prize, it turned out, was the entire end-of-year planning responsibility. The room fell silent. The gangster was bewildered. Seok-gu protested, arguing that such an important event couldn't be entrusted to someone so inexperienced. Bok Dong, however, had anticipated this. He pulled out the chairman's autobiography, which emphasized trusting one's subordinates and delegating responsibility. Seok-gu was speechless. The gangster was now in charge of the party. He paced in his oversized chair, unsure what to do. A cashier suggested he simply do what he wanted to do. Inspired, the gangster approached Jina, asking her to be the face of the supermarket and design a poster for him. Jina agreed on one condition: Seok-gu had to be on the poster too. They approached Seok-gu, who nearly choked on his drink when he learned he had to be a model. Jina's gentle persuasion eventually won him over. He'd do anything for the supermarket. Mi-ran, however, was suspicious. Why was the CFO's daughter suddenly working at their rival supermarket? She sensed something was amiss. Jina's true motive, however, was to escape her father's shadow. She was tired of being the CFO's daughter, of people assuming she'd only gotten her position through nepotism. That night, the CFO, worried about his daughter, followed Bok Dong. Bok Dong caught him, and they ended up at a restaurant they frequented in their younger days. The restaurant had changed hands. The food wasn't the same, but their friendship, despite their corporate rivalry, endured. The next day, Seok-gu arrived at the supermarket to find his and Jina's promotional posters plastered everywhere. He rushed inside, only to find the store transformed into a disco. The gangster, dressed as a bartender, greeted customers at the door. Upstairs, Bok-dong was Jing, while the Baya tribe danced enthusiastically below. Seok-gu felt like the only sane person left. He sat on the floor, defeated. After work, Jina invited Seok-gu to dinner. He was flustered by her sudden attention. Miran witnessed this exchange but walked away without a word. Seok-gu, however, declined Jina's invitation and went home to eat ramen alone. Jina's internship ended, and she returned to her father's office with a theory. The CFO kept losing to Bok-dong because of Seok-gu. They were a powerful duo. To defeat Bok-dong, they had to separate them. The CFO seemed intrigued. Meanwhile, Bok-dong felt a sense of unease. He slept at the office, waking up in a foul mood. He received a call from Mr. Kim, his former subordinate, and the first person he'd fired. They agreed to meet at a park. Seok-gu, fearing for Bok-dong's safety, followed him, along with the gangster. They watched as Bok-dong and Mr. Kim reminisced, seemingly without animosity. The gangster relaxed, but Seok-gu remained vigilant. During their conversation, Bok-dong learned about the hardships Mr. Kim had faced after being fired. He pretended to be cheerful, but he revealed that this would be the last time he'd see Bok-dong. Sensing something was wrong, Bok-dong stopped Mr. Kim as he was leaving. He noticed something bulky in Mr. Kim's pocket and pulled it out. It was Mr. Kim's old employee awards and certificates. Bok-dong was confused. Mr. Kim then confessed. After being fired, he'd opened a fried chicken restaurant, which had failed, leaving him with crippling debt. He was at the end of his rope and had planned to jump into the sea. Bok-dong, seeing his friend and former subordinate in such despair, apologized profusely. He'd been forced to fire Mr. Kim, a scapegoat for the chairman. He felt helpless and ashamed. Just then, an elderly man approached, offering words of comfort. Bok-dong initially mistook him for a ghost, but then realized it was a part-time worker he'd hired. The man had been a neighborhood security guard, unjustly fired after a dispute with residents. Bok-dong, seeing his potential for disrupting the supermarket, had hired him. The elderly man, overhearing their conversation, empathized with Mr. Kim's despair. He too had contemplated suicide at 16, born into poverty with no prospects. He changed his mind, resolving to live until he fulfilled his dream, which, it turned out, was to go on a date. Mr. Kim, unsure whether to laugh or cry, was moved by the old man's story and abandoned his suicidal thoughts. Cheonrima Mart's continued success prompted the Dema Group to send a psychiatrist to assess the employee's mental health. The psychiatrist questioned Bok-dong, who insisted he was perfectly fine. The psychiatrist, however, had heard rumors about Bok-dong's erratic behavior. He noticed the pen Bok-dong had thrown at the chairman's portrait and gently suggested a checkup. Bok-dong refused again. The psychiatrist, glancing at Bok-dong's notebook, saw it filled with doodles. Bok-dong explained that he used to be stressed at headquarters, but now, working at the supermarket, he felt relaxed and happy. He then proceeded to draw more circles on the page. Seeing Bok-dong's stubbornness, the psychiatrist gave up. Later, Bok-dong discovered a clearance section filled with expired and soon-to-expire products, including his ramen creation. Seok-gu explained it was his idea, a 95% discount on nearly expired items, displayed prominently to attract bargain hunters and boost sales. Bok-dong, initially confused, quickly devised another plan to bankrupt the store. He instructed Seok-gu to expand the clearance section, distribute flyers, add more popular items, and increase the discount. This would attract even more customers. Seok-gu, beaming at the rare praise, failed to see the trap. Back in his office, Bok-dong retrieved his battle armor, a leather helmet, full body armor, and a red cape. He emerged, looking like a deranged superhero. Seok-gu, checking inventory, turned to see Bok-dong in his full regalia, holding a sign. He handed Seok-gu a flyer. Anyone who caught him would get 70% off their entire purchase, plus a buy one get one deal. Seok-gu's mind reeled. Was Bok-dong trying to give away the entire store? This was insane. Just then, a group of customers spotted Bok-dong and gave chase. Bok-dong, however, was prepared. He dodged their initial attack with a graceful backflip, then performed a series of impressive spins before landing flawlessly. As the customers closed in, he effortlessly scaled a nearby pole. Seok-gu yelled that he wasn't supposed to be taunting the customers. Bok-dong countered that customers needed to earn their discounts. He then executed a perfect 180-degree spin in midair. To the astonishment of everyone, he appeared to briefly fly. Was he a real superhero? That night, two thieves broke into the supermarket. They seemed unfamiliar with the layout, stuffing random items into their bags. Spotting a sign for shopping carts, the thieves quietly entered a room to find one. One of them found a cart, calling his accomplice over to help. But the cart felt strangely soft. Suddenly, an alarm blared. They'd stumbled into the staff break room. The terrified thieves ran, only to be apprehended by the supermarket staff, who tranquilized them with darts. The captured thieves were then enthusiastically disciplined by the Bibaya tribe. However, this vigilante justice landed the entire tribe in jail. Bok Dong arrived to find the chief's daughter in tears, explaining that the Bibaya had been arrested. At the police station, the unrepentant Bibaya claimed self-defense. The thieves, however, dramatically exaggerated their injuries, one even sporting a baya horn glued to his backside. Bok Dong was told he had to pay 10 million won per thief for their release. The supermarket couldn't afford it. Bok Dong instructed Seok Gu to get the money from the CFO, reminding him of the budget allocation. Seok Gu, having previously offended the CFO, felt this was a suicide mission. Bok Dong gave him 3 sealed notes, to be opened only if necessary. Seok Gu approached the CFO, who, as Bok Dong predicted, refused to pay. Seok Gu opened the first note. It contained a thinly veiled threat to have the company's accounts audited, alluding to the CFO's past corruption. The CFO, enraged, grabbed Seok Gu, giving him one last chance to choose sides, Bok Dong or him. Seok Gu, seeing the CFO's fury, opened the second note. It read, "Following you is worse than following the local fire department." The CFO, though still fuming, calmed down slightly and agreed to release the funds. He then issued a chilling ultimatum. It was either him or Seok Gu at the company. One of them had to go. Seok Gu, shocked and hurt, tried to explain, but the CFO mercilessly threw him out. After leaving the office, Seok Gu opened the final note, marveling at Bok Dong's foresight. He vowed to keep this last powerful weapon secret, using it only when absolutely necessary. Bok Dong, having received the money, went to the police station, paid the thieves compensation, bailed out the Bibaya tribe, and even gave them a gift of tofu, encouraging them to start anew. The grateful Bibaya chief pledged their loyalty to Cheonrima Mart, now their true home. Bok Dong had given up on bankrupting the supermarket. He'd tried everything. He'd let fate decide. The chairman, meanwhile, had heard rumors about the CFO's embezzlement. He hoped his grandson, facing financial penalties, would learn a valuable lesson. However, he returned home to find his grandson playing with blocks, seemingly unfazed. Enraged, he berated the vice president, who finally pushed back, tired of being forced into a role he didn't want. The chairman kicked him out, cutting off his credit cards. The vice president ended up living under a bridge. The next day, the chairman arrived at Cheonrima Mart. Bok Dong and the staff greeted him. As Bok Dong was about to escort him inside, Seok Gu appeared, performing another handstand. The chairman, amused, praised Seok Gu's ingenuity. The chairman then took Bok Dong to his office. Miran, sensing trouble, watched them closely. The chairman planned to bring Bok Dong back to headquarters and shut down Cheonrima Mart. Seok Gu, eavesdropping outside the door, overheard this conversation and rushed away. The next day, the staff gathered for Curly Hair's birthday party. Seeing their camaraderie, Bok Dong realized Cheonrima Mart had become a true family. He decided to protect them, refusing to return to headquarters. That night, he confronted the CFO, demanding he confess to the embezzlement. The CFO, however, was unconcerned. Bok Dong only had copies of the evidence, not the originals. Back home, Seok Gu, remembering the chairman's plan to close the supermarket, retrieved a hidden document, the original evidence of the CFO's embezzlement, meticulously collected during his time at the supermarket. Clever Seok Gu had been holding on to the ultimate trump card. Confident that Bok Dong lacked concrete evidence, the CFO turned to leave. Bok Dong, however, smirked, hinting that his evidence was more substantial than the CFO assumed. The next day, Miran invited Seok Gu to lunch. Just then, Seok Gu received a call from the CFO and rushed off. Miran, sensing something amiss, alerted Bok Dong. Bok Dong seemed unconcerned, claiming everyone underestimated Seok Gu, who was far more cunning than he appeared. At the CFO's office, the CFO accused Seok Gu of plotting against him. Seok Gu feigned ignorance. The CFO revealed he knew about the high turnover rate of previous supermarket managers, who'd all quit after 3 months. Seok Gu, however, had stayed, diligently collecting evidence against each manager and building a case against the CFO. He'd realized Bok Dong was a different kind of manager, not easily manipulated, so he'd adopted a strategy of feigned incompetence. Hearing this, Seok Gu burst out laughing. The CFO, assuming he was being mocked, was taken aback when Seok Gu asked about his lunch. Seok Gu then pointed to a small sticker on the CFO's backside. Seok Gu's laughter intensified until he collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. The CFO felt a surge of helplessness. Seok Gu hadn't been listening to a word he'd said, fixated only on the sticker. The CFO realized Seok Gu had evidence, but he wasn't as clever as he thought. He took Seok Gu to the rooftop, offering him a view of the city. a taste of the high life, and a few days to think about handing over the evidence. Back at the supermarket, Seok-gu, watching the staff diligently working, contemplated the CFO's offer. Bok Dong observed him from the second floor. The gangster, sharing snacks with the cashier, was interrupted by a group of menacing men, led by his former gang boss. They tried to lure him back into a life of crime. The gangster, however, had found a new home at Cheonrema Mart and politely refused. The gang boss, however, mocked the gangster's newfound respectability, taunting him relentlessly. His thugs began causing trouble in the supermarket. The gangster, wanting to avoid further disruption, knelt before his former boss, begging for forgiveness. Seok-gu, witnessing this, warned the gangsters to leave. They turned on him menacingly. The gangster, shielding Seok-gu, agreed to go back with them, changing back into his old gang attire. The staff watched sadly as the gangster prepared to leave. They tried to persuade him to stay, but he didn't want to cause them any more trouble. Bok Dong arrived just in time. The gang boss, unimpressed, produced a contract the gangster had supposedly signed, demanding 20 million won. Bok Dong, recognizing it as a blatant extortion attempt, ripped up the contract. The thugs attacked Bok Dong, who easily dodged them. Suddenly, the little girl ran forward and collided with one of the thugs, flying 10 feet backward and landing motionless on the floor. A pool of blood, actually ketchup and hot sauce, formed around her head. The gangsters, fearing they'd killed her, decided to cut their losses and fled. The little girl then miraculously woke up, unharmed. It had been a ruse, a trick she'd learned from the gangster. The staff, who'd been terrified, were relieved. The girl hugged the gangster, who burst into tears. He was finally free from his past. Seok-gu, having witnessed everything, knew what he had to do. He took Bok Dong to confront the chairman, armed with a stack of documents. He presented the evidence to the chairman, accusing the CFO of embezzlement and using Cheonrema Mart as a front for money laundering. The CFO denied everything, claiming it was a conspiracy. The chairman, however, wasn't fooled. He dismissed the CFO and his grandson, sending them to a rural branch. Seok-gu, hailed as a hero, was promoted to department head. Remembering Bok Dong's words, the chairman decided not to close Cheonrema Mart. He appointed Seok-gu the permanent store manager and offered Bok Dong his old position as CEO. Seok-gu returned to the supermarket, announcing Bok Dong's departure. The staff were heartbroken. Just then, Bok Dong walked in. He'd refused the CEO position, choosing to stay at Cheonrema Mart, his newfound home. The staff erupted in cheers. 3 months later, the CFO and his grandson, now working at the rural branch, had embraced their new lives. The CFO even abandoned his toupee, symbolizing a fresh start. At the company's annual New Year's party, Bok Dong and Seok-gu exchanged knowing glances. They had a plan. Bok Dong took the stage, delivering a memorable performance and inviting both the chairman and the reformed CFO to join the celebration. Everyone sang and danced, their faces filled with genuine joy. Cheonrema Mart continued to thrive, attracting competition from other supermarkets. Seok-gu suggested expanding with new branches, but Bok Dong had a different vision: to conquer the industry with the power of one supermarket. Seok-gu smiled. And that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.